China has kicked off its 6th annual World Internet Conference. Participants are not only exploring how to achieve greater global connectivity, openness, and cooperation, but how to balance that with growing concerns about threats to cybersecurity. As China is home to the world's largest number of Internet users, estimated at 850 million. What kind of cybersecurity threats does it face, and what progress is being made to fulfill Chinese President Xi Jinping's vision of an international community with, quote, a common future in cyberspace? Joining me for the discussion in our Beijing studio, Thomas Luo, the co-founder and CEO of PingWest, which tracks global technology trends, and from Bangkok, Professor Jeffrey Towson of Peking University, who specializes in digital trends across China. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point today. Professor Towson, let me start with you. This is the 6th edition of the conference and a remarkable milestone of the age of the Internet, 50 years since the birth of the Internet. What differences in the theme of the conference have you noticed about this year?
Well, I think it's hard to separate the conference from the fact that the U.S. and China are in a fairly significant resetting of the relationship at multiple levels, and one of those which came up almost immediately in the last year has been technology. So that kind of runs through this is the intersection of the Internet digital initiatives in China, things like AI, things like data, all of the big initiatives we're looking at. How is that going to interact with the same phenomenon happening in the U.S. and parts of the West? So that kind of hangs over the whole, not hangs over, but it's a big theme running through this. And fortunately, you can find, this is such a big phenomenon that's so important that you can find things that the U.S. and China absolutely agree on. Cybersecurity, safety for children, things like that, okay. Common infrastructure standards. So there's a lot there that actually does work out.
There's a lot for the potential cooperation between the two sides. Thomas, let me come to you now. Yeah. What do you think is the value of bringing the biggest names on the front line of the industry, both here in China and abroad, to this conference? What have they achieved?
Yeah, I think the most important things in the conference achieved is to make China as a really important role or as a very key role in the in the worldwide cybersecurity or in the worldwide cyber governance, or to show China's own voice on how to set up a global or a worldwide community, cyber community for of destiny.
What specific role is that, if you could elaborate on that?
What specific role, right? I think it's really, it should be in various perspectives. I think one of the most thing is about the cybersecurity, about the digital economy, as well as so many issues, I think. Yeah.
I want to talk to the both of you also about the themes this year, which are greater connectivity, openness, cooperation, coupled with tougher vigilance of cybersecurity threats. Professor Towson, what are the most pressing issues in these sectors that could possibly be addressed at the conference?
Right. When you talk about connectivity, it immediately leads you to 5G. And I was at Huawei campus not too long ago, and what they're doing it's phenomenal. It's this idea of we're no longer going to connect phones to computers, people to people. We're going to connect everything to everything. Every device, every part of your house, every part of the street is going to connect to everything else. So the connectivity is exploding, enabled by 5G and then cloud and data, which is amazing, but it also raises the question of security. How do you protect such a system from attack when everything's interacting with everything? So the possibilities are going up by a quantum step, but so are the challenges.
And Thomas, 5G definitely a highlight of this year's conference.
Exactly.
And that, linked with traditional sectors and industries, has huge potential, according to attendees. What do you think is the most important issue in that sector and in other key areas and themed areas this year?
Yeah, I think 5G technology is not only for the connectivity between an individual to another individual. I think the most important thing, or the most breakthrough innovation for 5G technology, is to make the connectivity makes sense to the industry, the multiple industries, like how 5G can make sense to the agricultural, or how 5G can make to the, we call it the intelligence or the smart manufacturing, or how 5G can play a really important role on the social governance. I think that's the most important things for 5G, and it is really different from the past, or the 3G technology or the 4G technology. I think this is really important. Just as Jeffrey mentioned, it also just causes some kind of the security issues since the 5G technologies really break through, or it is really makes sense to the whole society, not only for the economy but also for the governance and the society issues. Yeah.
There's still a distance between us and when 5G is commercialized. So it's really critical to think ahead about the threats that might come along with better technology. And Professor Towson there talked about the potential for cooperation between China and the United States. And it's not just potential of cooperation between these two. In his letter to welcome conference attendees, President Xi actually said it's the common responsibility of the international community to develop, use, and govern the internet to better benefit the mankind. Professor Towson, how do we do that exactly?
Well, I think when you start talking about governing the internet, you're really talking about government involvement, either at the country level or the international level, and exerting control over certain parts of the internet. And you get a lot of consensus at certain points. If you talk about banking, every single country agrees that banking done online should be governed by the country or the trade agreements. Nobody wants just free-form banking and credit happening in cyberspace. And then you maybe move to the other side of just making phone calls. Most people, most governments are hands-off on, look, you can call whoever you want. Phone calls are phone calls. So you can definitely see areas of agreement of, sort of oversight, sovereignty of various, internet aspects that all countries agree on. And then there's a lot in between where it's going to play out country by country. China's not going to agree with certain things with Germany. The U.S. is not going to agree with certain things with France. And we're going to see that play out sort of issue by issue. But there's definitely room for sort of international consensus on a fairly significant range of issues regarding cyberspace.
Thomas, in the past, President Xi has also advocated the idea of internet sovereignty. That's an unfamiliar concept to a lot of people. Help us understand what he meant.
I think the internet or the cyber, I think it's a part of the national issues, that is, because now you cannot say, okay, we have a digital world and we have another physical world. I think they cannot be separated. So that's the issues why we need to rethink the issues like and how we can to make the impact, how we can put together with the cyber world and the physical world together. I think it is the most important point that President Xi mentioned this.
Let me rephrase. It's actually cyber sovereignty. And Professor, I want to get your take on what cyber sovereignty means.
Right. My understanding of the President's comments on this over the last couple of years, President Xi, was this idea that there are aspects of cyberspace that are under a country's sort of discretion, control. There's the way internet works in China, there's the way the internet works in Mexico, and so on. And I think depending within that idea, there's certain aspects that pretty much every country in the world agrees upon. Violent actions, children, advertisements for children. Not everyone with a cell phone can start making loans to other people, things like that. Everyone would agree, yes, those are sovereign issues. Every country is going to regulate those with regards to their own country. How far you choose to spread that out, how much that includes, does sort of change country by country. But yeah, certainly we see that in industry after industry, particularly like financial services, healthcare, education. You see a lot of sort of sovereign involvement in cyberspace.
At this conference, people really are, while reflecting on the past 50 years, looking ahead to the next 50 years. But there are very current issues that have troubled people and nations in tackling them. We're talking about cyber attacks, abuse of information, and other threats. These do not take another 50 years to happen. They are very current. They are very urgent to be solved. What is being done, Thomas, to resolve these issues?
I think just China have signed some kind of the MOUs with so many countries like Russia or Mexico or India or even the United Kingdom, and with so many countries to, in terms of to overcome this kind of the issues like the cyber attacks or the cyber crime or this sort of things. I think this kind of the agreement or this kind of the MOUs will, by taking a long view, it will make sense to strengthen the consensus among multiple countries to do things together, I think. Yeah.
Professor, some of these issues, privacy leaks, information infringement, they go beyond borders. What does it take for governments and institutions to come together and help address these problems?
Right. This is one where you have to kind of look to the large tech companies, the platforms, Tencent, Alibaba, Google, Facebook, and all of these, because that's this is where most of the activity is actually happening. This is where billions of people are engaging. So that is kind of your point of solution, as well as kind of the point of the problem. And these problems are also so technically difficult to solve that you almost need armies of software engineers to go after them. But we can see examples of this. We can see Alibaba taking on IP infringement and having fake goods be removed, which they're doing. You can see that happening. You can see inappropriate ads, which are digital ads in the United States are overwhelmingly Google and Facebook, so they can tackle that problem. A lot of the problem is just there's so many unexpected things popping up that we didn't see coming because it's all new terrain. But it usually cycles back to 8 to 10 tech leaders, about half of them in the U.S. and the West, half of them in China, that you look to as the starting point for a solution.
Well, gentlemen, we don't have a lot of time left. In the first half of the show, we talked about China's slower economic growth now. For a lot of people attending the conference, digital economy is a big topic. Briefly talk to me about what a digital economy could foster growth here in China. Thomas, let me start with you.
Okay, just very
briefly, if you can.
Very briefly, I think the digital economy can make sense to not only for the trade, but also for the healthy economic growth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Professor, your take?
Yeah, the digital economy is rocking and rolling. We don't talk about 5%, 6%. We talk 20, 30, 40%. So it's all all forward in our regard.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insight.